All right, let's dive right into one of the most brilliant and savage satires ever put to paper, Gulliver's Travels. Now, you might think you know this story. Giants, tiny people, right? But believe me, it is so much more than a simple adventure tale. It's a ruthless takedown of humanity itself.
So let's actually start not at the beginning, but with this incredibly bitter sign-off from the man himself, Lemuel Gulliver. He's not just disappointed, he's completely disgusted that his whole incredible journey didn't manage to fix humanity, or, as he's come to call us, yahoos. And that really sets up the big question for our entire journey here. I mean, what on earth could a person witness that would make them hate their own species so completely? Well, to figure that out, we have to follow along on his 4 wild voyages.
Okay, so voyage number 1. It kicks off with a good old-fashioned shipwreck. Gulliver washes up on a beach, and when he wakes up, he's in Lilliput, a land where the people are less than 6 inches tall. To them, he's a living, breathing mountain. It doesn't take him long to realize that Lilliputian society is just completely torn apart by the most ridiculous, trivial things you can imagine. Their entire political system is basically a huge fight between the Tremixan party who wear high heels and the Slemixan party who wear low ones. Sound familiar at all?
And if you think that's absurd, get this. This is what their foreign policy is based on. Lilliput has been locked in this bloody, endless war with their neighbor Blefuscu for generations, all because they can't agree on which end of an egg you're supposed to break. It's just a perfect, stinging satire of pointless wars over dogma.
So, Gulliver, being a giant, becomes this huge military asset. He wades into the channel and captures the entire enemy fleet by himself. He's a national hero. But then his conscience kicks in. The Emperor orders him to help completely crush and enslave the people of Blefuscu, and Gulliver says no. And just like that, he goes from hero to traitor.
All right, let's move on to the second voyage, because this is where things get really interesting. Now, the tables are completely, and I mean completely turned.
After being left behind by his crew, Gulliver finds himself in Brobdingnag, a land of 60-foot-tall giants. Suddenly, he's the tiny one. He's this little curiosity, a fragile little pet in a world that could crush him by accident. He gets treated like a circus freak for a while, shown off for money, before he eventually gets sold to the queen and ends up living in the royal court. And it's here he has these long talks with the king, where he just proudly lays out all the glories of Europe, our politics, our laws, our wars, our history.
But the king, who is wise and moral, is not impressed. Not at all. After Gulliver describes things like gunpowder and the constant fighting back in Europe, the king just drops this absolutely devastating judgment on all of us. When you look at humanity from a different perspective, we suddenly seem pretty awful, don't we?
Gulliver's third voyage is kind of a chaotic tour through a bunch of different islands, and each one makes fun of some kind of intellectual nonsense. This is where the satire turns to the follies of so-called reason, when it's totally disconnected from any kind of reality.
The most famous stop is the Grand Academy of Legato. And get this, he sees these projectors, basically scientists, trying to do things like extract sunbeams from cucumbers or build houses starting from the roof. It's a hilarious critique of academic projects that are completely useless and have no benefit for humankind.
Then he travels on to Lugnag, where he hears about these people called the Strullbrugs. And at first he thinks, wow, immortality! They must be the wisest, happiest people alive, totally free from the fear of death. Yeah, no. The reality is a complete nightmare. They're mortal, sure, but they don't have eternal youth. They're cursed to just keep aging forever, suffering from every disease and weakness of old age with no end in sight. They become these miserable, senile outcasts. It's a really chilling warning to be careful what you wish for.
So all of this has been building to the fourth and final voyage. And this one delivers the knockout blow. This is where Gulliver's view of what it means to be human gets shattered into a million pieces. He arrives in a land governed by the Huyen Hums, these incredibly intelligent talking horses who live by pure reason and virtue. Their society is perfect, and serving them are the yahoos, these disgusting, filthy, violent creatures that look an awful lot like humans. And Gulliver is immediately repulsed by them.
As Gulliver is explaining human society to his Houyhnhnm master, talking about war and lawyers and money and all our vices, the master makes this really sharp observation. He says humans aren't just irrational like the yahoos. Nope,
We use our little bit of intelligence to make our natural awfulness even worse.
And that leads to this moment of pure horror for Gulliver. He catches his reflection in a pool of water, and he doesn't see a proper European gentleman. He sees a Yahoo. He realizes that underneath his clothes and his civilized manners, he's physically the exact same as the creatures he hates so much.
And that just breaks him. Completely. He's forced to leave, and when he finally gets back home to England, he can't stand to be around other people. Not even his own wife and children. Their smell, the way they look, everything about them disgusts him. He ends up spending all his time in the stable, just talking to his horses.
So what's the final word? What's the takeaway from all this misery? Well, in the end, Gulliver decides that the root of all human evil is pride. It's our arrogant refusal to see ourselves for the flawed, corrupt yahoos that we are. And the ultimate irony, of course, is that he says this with an incredible amount of pride in his own supposed humility.
Which brings us to our final thought. It's a question that has been bugging readers for centuries, and it feels more relevant than ever. After all this time, you look at our world, our conflicts, our foolishness. Was Jonathan Swift right about us?